From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
You have 5 minutes to leave. If you refuse to move, you will be arrested. If you refuse to move, chemical agents will be used.
Police in Oakland, California, first used tear gas and stun grenades on Occupy Oakland protesters. Over 100 people have been arrested in the last day. We'll speak with an organizer with Occupy Oakland and with a San Francisco supervisor who is trying to protect the right of assembly for Occupy San Francisco. Then, with liberty and justice for some, how the law is used to destroy equality and protect the powerful.
And if you're somebody who believes that the President of the United States has the power to order your fellow citizens murdered, assassinated, killed, without even a shred of due process, without having to charge him with crimes or indict him and prove in a court that he's actually guilty, then you're really declaring yourself to be as pure of an authoritarian as it gets.
We speak with renowned political and legal writer Glenn Greenwald. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. A new congressional study has found the incomes for the wealthiest 1% of Americans nearly tripled over the last 3 decades, far outpacing income growth for all other groups. Between 1979 and 2007, the average real after-tax household income grew by 275% for the wealthiest Americans. Income grew by just 40% for middle-class Americans during the same period. The study also found the wealthiest 20% of Americans made more money in 2007 than the rest of the country combined. Democratic Congressmember Sandy Levin said the report was, quote, the latest evidence of the alarming rise in income inequality. Oakland police repeatedly fired tear gas and flash grenades Tuesday night as protesters attempted to retake Occupy Oakland encampment outside City Hall. The protests began 12 hours after police conducted a pre-dawn raid on Occupy Oakland site, arresting nearly 100 protesters. The detained protesters are being held on $10,000 bail. We'll have more from Oakland after headlines. Meanwhile, in Atlanta, police have arrested more than 50 protesters who've been camping out in Woodruff Park for the past 2 weeks. Over 2,500 people have now been arrested across the country since the Occupy Wall Street movement began. Here in New York, over 100 students, teachers, educational activists occupied a New York City Board of Education meeting Tuesday night to protest the city's education policies, including budget cutbacks, layoffs, large class sizes, and an overemphasis on standardized testing. After New York School's Chancellor Dennis Walcott and school board members fled the meeting, an impromptu General Assembly was held. Speakers included an 8-year-old student named Indigo. The Occupy Wall Street movement was also a topic of conversation Tuesday night when President Obama appeared on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno.
As president, you look out your window, do you see this Occupy Wall Street movement? What do you make of it from your...
Look, people are frustrated, and that frustration has expressed itself in a lot of different ways. It expressed itself in the Tea Party. It's expressing itself in Occupy Wall Street. I do think that what this signals is that people in leadership, whether it's corporate leadership, leaders in the banks, leaders in Washington, Everybody needs to understand that the American people feel like nobody's looking out for them right now.
The Obama administration outlined a new effort Tuesday to help college students struggling to pay off student loans. A key part of the plan will allow college graduates to cap their federal student loan repayments at 10% of their discretionary income starting in January, 2 years before the cap was due to take effect under federal law. Outstanding student loans in the United States are projected to reach a record $1 trillion this year, a larger sum than credit card debt. In news from Libya, the bodies of at least 267 people have been found in mass graves in Sirte, the hometown of slain Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. It appears many of the dead were summarily executed. Local residents describe the mass grave.
There are 300 bodies here. We found them in more than one place. Most of them are residents of Sirte. Some are from the Mahari Hotel, who we found with their hands tied and shot in the head. Most of them were wounded.
The news comes as reports that surfaced on Monday indicated 53 Gaddafi supporters were killed in a similar fashion in Sirte. The New York-based group Human Rights Watch said, quote, "This latest massacre seems part of a trend of killings, lootings, and other abuses committed by anti-Gaddafi fighters who consider themselves above the law." Violence in Yemen continues to escalate despite a call for a ceasefire announced by the embattled government of President Ali Abdullah Saleh. At least 7 protesters were killed in the capital city of Sana'a Tuesday, as Saleh told the U.S. ambassador he would sign a deal to step down, an offer he has made several times before. Despite the claims government troops were still firing into crowds of protesting civilians late into the evening Tuesday. Protesters described being attacked by Yemeni forces.
We
were walking in the street of Al Zira. They told us to walk in peace, and when we arrived to the area, they besieged us from behind, and the military vehicle sprayed us from the front, and then we were fired upon by bullets. They opened fire. They threw stones at us, fired tear gas, water.
The United Nations General Assembly voted overwhelmingly Tuesday to condemn the U.S. embargo against Cuba for the 20th year in a row. The final vote was 186-2. The United States and Israel were the only nations to vote against the resolution. Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez said the sanctions have caused direct economic damages of close to $1 trillion to the Cuban people over nearly half a century.
Cambiado durante 50 años, Mr. President.
The only thing that has changed over the last 50 years, Mr. President, has been the blockade and the hostile, aggressive policy of the United States, in spite of the fact that this policy has not worked, or will it ever. However, what the U.S. government wants to see change will not change. The Cuban government will continue to be the government of the people, by the people, and for the people.
U.S. Ambassador Ronald Goddard criticized the United Nations vote on the U.S. embargo of Cuba.
For yet another year, this Assembly is taking up a resolution designed to confuse and obscure. But let there be no confusion about this. The United States, like most member states, reaffirms its strong commitment to supporting the right and the heartfelt desire of the Cuban people to freely determine their future. And let there be no obscuring that the Cuban regime has deprived them of this right for more than half a century.
In other news from the United Nations, another member of the UN Security Council, South Africa, has publicly declared its support for Palestinian statehood. The government said in a statement, quote, "South Africa looks forward sooner rather than later to welcoming Palestine as the 194th member of the United Nations." Meanwhile, the United Nations body UNESCO is preparing to vote as early as this week to grant Palestine membership in the body. The U.S. has threatened to cut off U.S. funding for UNESCO if it approves full Palestinian membership. In San Francisco, over 1,000 protesters rallied outside President Obama's fundraiser at the W Hotel Tuesday. One protester was Susie Tompkins Buell, one of the most generous Democratic Party donors in the nation. The co-founder of Esprit said of Obama, quote, "I don't even know what he stands for." She and other protesters were calling on Obama to block the Keystone XL tar sands pipeline. In business news, the oil giant BP reported it made $4.9 billion over the last 3 months. This compared with $1.8 billion a year earlier. Meanwhile, former Goldman Sachs director Rajat Gupta is expected to surrender to the FBI today. He's facing criminal charges for leaking corporate secrets to hedge fund manager Raj Rajaratnam. Gupta becomes the most prominent business executive arrested in a growing insider trading probe. In Colorado, more than 300 customers of Wells Fargo pulled their money out of the state's largest bank Tuesday. The action was organized by the Colorado Progressive Coalition as part of a week of actions called the Mile High Showdown. 8 former and current officers with the New York City Police Department have been charged in federal court for accepting thousands of dollars to transport illegal weapons, including assault rifles, into the state, along with other outlawed contraband. According to a complaint, the officers and 4 other men transported M16 rifles and handguns, as well as what they believe to be stolen merchandise across 5 states. 5 of the officers are still on duty. In news from South America, another Brazilian activist who campaigned against illegal deforestation of the Amazon has been assassinated. 55-year-old João Chupel Prio was killed on Saturday. He's the 8th environmentalist farmer to be killed since May in the Amazon. In other news from the region, the Senate in Uruguay voted Tuesday to revoke an amnesty law protecting scores of former officials who served during the country's dictatorship from 1973 to 85. The latest campaign ad for presidential hopeful Herman Cain has gone viral, in part because the ad ends with an odd clip of his chief of staff, Mark Bloch, taking a drag on a cigarette and then blowing smoke into the camera.
We've run a campaign like nobody's ever seen, but then America's never seen a candidate like Herman Cain. We need you to get involved because together we can do this. We can take this country back.
Up until January, Mark Bloch served as the Wisconsin Director of Americans for Prosperity, a Koch brothers-funded organization. The ad has surprised some, since Herman Cain is a cancer survivor. In 2006, he was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, which had spread to his liver. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Democracy Now!'s Nermeen Sheikh.
Thank you, Amy. And welcome to our listeners around the world and around the country.